All you lovely people, welcome back. I hope you had a nice little break there. So now I hope we have a sense of what Ayn Rand means by ethical egoism and what she, how she fleshes that out. Again, just recall one more time so you remember. Ethical egoism, what is it? Ethical egoism is the theory of morality claiming that a person should always act according to prudence and never altruistically sacrifice their interests for those of another. And as I've mentioned now, Ayn Rand is defending a very strong view of ethical egoism, the idea that a person and that person alone determines their own interests. And so a person can never be wrong about what's in their own interests. Because again, she really doesn't want to be paternalistic and tell other people what it is they should do with their lives. And we'll see her defense of that in a moment. But again, just one last thing then is, of course, that in the last video, I just went into detail about what she means by prudent self-interest as preference satisfaction. Again, she believes you should always act so that you're satisfying your values, your preferences. And so, yeah, there's a lot to her theory. Be prudent. You can never be wrong about what's in your prudence. And then what does she mean by prudence, right? She means happiness. And what she means by happiness, she means preference satisfaction. Well, what's that? That's satisfying your values, your desires. And that's morality for her. And so that's the very precise nature of what she means by all this stuff. Well, how does she defend this claim, this ethical egoism, this ethics of, be prudent, seek your own happiness, and get whatever it is you want? And, this ethics of prudence that says, don't be altruistic, do not be concerned with the happiness of others. I mean, if you want to be, fine, but you don't have to be. Focus on your interests, your prudence. And I think we get a bit of a complicated argument here, so I'll throw up kind of this skeleton of the argument so you can at least see it. And then I think we can fill this in as I'll walk us through key parts of the text, because the text is a bit of a mess, I won't lie. It's just because this guy is rambling. It's from one of her big novels, and you can tell this is a gigantic novel of well over 1,000 pages. I mean, anyone who reads this whole thing deserves a badge, because this is like maybe it's longer than War and Peace. I don't know. It's long. But this is kind of a rambling argument that a character is giving. And so I'm going to try to piece it together so you can see what's going on here. So I guess at least we can already start off. We know the conclusion of the argument. I've already kind of told you that. And the conclusion here is you should accept ethical egoism, right? This character in this novel who's speaking and giving this defense, what he is saying is you, dear reader, or you in the audience, you should accept ethical egoism. Okay, easy enough. So how the heck is she going to defend and justify this? It's going to be complicated, but let's get started then. So I think we get our first premise of her argument. First important premise is on page 1014. So if you jump to 1014, you can see her say, man's life is the standard of morality, but your own life is its purpose. If existence on this earth is your goal, you must choose your actions and values by the standard of that which is proper to man, for the purpose of preserving, fulfilling, and enjoying the irreplaceable value, which is your life. And if you go down a little bit further on that page, you can see a little follow-up here where she says, every man is an end in himself. He exists for his own sake, and the achievement of his own happiness is his highest moral purpose. We'll ignore the gendered language there. I'm pretty sure since she's a woman, she includes women in this. Though her characters in her books can often be quite sexist. That's interesting. Another time for that, I guess. But anyway, here what I think she's asserting, Ayn Rand is asserting, is a premise that I will call the primacy of the individual. You have only one life to live, and so your life and your interests should be of supreme importance to you. Hey, look, man, and women. You have only one life to live. We only all go around once, and when it's done, it's done. That's it. We have our one shot at this life, and that's all we get. And so your life and your happiness should be of supreme importance to you, of supreme ethical and moral importance to you, because this life cannot be replaced. Once it's done, it's done. And so from that premise, I think we can see her immediately assert that an ethical theory should be consistent with this primacy. Morality should respect the primacy of your individuality. And so it should, theory of morality should let you embrace this primacy of how important your life is to you. It shouldn't shun that. It should accept and embrace this primacy. So that's what she thinks any ethics ought to do. And so now I think we get her, then she talks a bit about altruism in a lot of places in this. I'll focus on page 1011 or 1011. Here she says, "You have heard no concepts of morality, but the mystical or the social. You have been taught that morality is a code of behavior imposed on you by whim, the whim of a supernatural power or the whim of society, to serve God's purpose or your neighbor's welfare, to please an authority beyond the grave or else next door, but not to serve your life or pleasure." And I think if you jump to the top of the next page, that's page 1012 or 1012, she continues, "Both sides," here she's talking about God and society, "both sides, God and society, agree that morality demands the surrender of your self-interest." That is what she's saying here is that altruism is removing your freedom to choose. It's forcing you, demanding you, requiring that you care about others. Either this is coming from the demands of religion or coming from the demands of society. Yeah, she's an atheist, clearly. God or society are telling you what you ought to do, and that's paternalism. Again, they're telling you what your interests are, what you should be doing, and they demand you to then do it, even if you disagree with them. Again, you're being treated like a child. And here's where Ayn Rand has some colorful language. She calls these people who are trying to demand things from you the parasites, the cannibals. And they're using you. They're using you like a prostitute, making you sacrifice your life, your pleasure, your existence for them, to give them pleasure. That's what parasites and cannibals do. They're treating you and your life like you're a prostitute. And so, yeah, she's setting up a pretty strong view of altruism there. So this is her thesis about altruism, that an ethics of altruism demands that you put the interests of others before your own interests. That's what altruism does, according to her. And then we can see her next premise on page 1030. So 1030, we can look and see Ayn Rand say, "This much is true. The most selfish of all things is the independent mind that recognizes no authority higher than its own and no value higher than its judgment of truth." And so here what she's basically saying is that prudence, a concern with your own interests, that gives you freedom. Prudence gives you freedom to choose. You get to choose for yourself what it is that you want, what it is that you value, what it is that you prefer. And you get to do that according to an ethics of prudence. So here then we're getting a new premise about prudence, namely that an ethics of prudence demands that you put your own interests before those of others. So it's the flip of altruism. So we can pause for a moment now and see, well, what is she doing now so far in this argument? She has set up the idea of the primacy of the individual. And she's pretty clear with her colorful language that altruism does not respect you as an individual. It forces you to sacrifice yourself like a prostitute for the needs and demands and pleasures of others. So altruism does not respect the primacy of your individuality. Of course, she's thinking, it sounds like prudence is respecting this because it's letting you choose what to do with your life. So it does respect your individuality. But she still needs one more premise. I think we can see this premise on page 1014, where Ayn Rand says, "Since life requires a specific course of action, any other course of action will destroy it. A being who does not hold his own life as the motive and goal of his actions is acting on the motive and standards of death." Oh, wow. But hey, if you've ever seen The Shawshank Redemption, maybe some of you have seen this, it's a classic little film, you know about this choice that Rand is talking about, this choice between life and death. If you've seen the movie, you've definitely heard it.
I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living, or get busy dying.
Yeah, you get busy living, or you get busy dying. You can't have it both ways. These are pulling you in opposite directions, and a choice has to be made. So I would see this as a statement of what I will call the conflicting concerns model. As you can see from this picture here, this model, sees a concern with yourself as in conflict with a concern for others. They're pulling literally you in opposite directions. So yeah, you can get busy living by being concerned with your own interests, or you can get busy dying by neglecting yourself and being concerned with the interests of others. And so I think this is the last major premise in Ayn Rand's argument, and the rest will start to flow pretty naturally from this. So this premise is the conflicting concerns model. Prudent behavior and altruistic behavior are mutually exclusive. They pull in opposite directions. If you want one of these, you can't have the other. And now I think her argument has a pretty clear flow, because now with the conflicting concerns model, she's established a choice between altruism and prudence. You can't have it both ways. And so how should we pick between these two things? She says, well, let the primacy of the individual guide you. And which of these does the primacy of the individual respect? Well, altruism disrespects you and prudence respects you. So then the choice is clear. We must accept an ethics of prudence. Again, get busy living with prudence or get busy dying with altruism, she would say. And so, yeah, the primacy of the individual says get busy living, so pick an ethics of prudence. And I wonder what this ethics of prudence could be. Well, of course, we know the answer to that. That is, of course, ethical egoism. Ethical egoism is an ethics of prudence. Perhaps it is the one and only ethics of prudence. In any case, we now get the conclusion that we should accept, or that you should accept, ethical egoism. And I think that's it. I think that's her argument. With this, she has embraced prudence and rejected altruism based on the primacy of you as an individual in your life and its importance. And so she's saying, yeah, seek your happiness, not the happiness of others. She says, go get whatever it is you want. You decide that for yourself. That's your life to live. And don't worry about what other people want. Don't worry about that. Go after what it is that you value, what matters to you, and you get to decide that. Well, that's a pretty complicated argument. We can look at all there. Wow, it's a lot of stuff going on. I'll give you some time to process that. So why don't we take our stretch time, and when we get back, I'll present a challenge to Ayn Rand's argument. But first, hey, take that stretch, and I'll see you right back here in a moment.